Okay. Well, welcome all to our book talk this afternoon, K-12 Landscape Architecture, published by Gatekeeper Press in 2021. And firstly, congratulations to Arnaldo Cardona, a TC alum, who has just published the sequel to this book. So perhaps a double congratulations. Welcome, everyone. My name is Jennifer Govan. I am Library Director and Senior Librarian at Teachers College, Columbia University. And it's my pleasure to host this book talk this afternoon. I am going to give a brief introduction to Dr. Heidi Jacobs, who will then introduce Arnaldo Cardona. So Heidi Hayes Jacobs is founder and president of Curriculum Designers, which provides professional services to schools, organizations, and agencies to create modern learning environments, upgrade curriculum, and support teaching strategies to meet the needs of contemporary learners. She's been with this company since 1995, so a full 27 years. And her models on curriculum mapping and design are featured in numerous books and software solutions. She has taught courses at Columbia University Teachers College since 1981. And she's worked with a range of organizations that include the College Board, NBC Sunday Today Show, the Peace Corps, the Discovery Channel, the Children's Television Workshop, the Kennedy Center, and much more. Dr. Heidi Jacobs is a TC alum, and she is to whom Arnaldo has dedicated his book.
Both.
Dr. Heidi Jacobs is an author and internationally recognized education leader known for her work in curriculum mapping, curriculum integration, and developing 21st century approaches to teaching and learning. She received her doctorate in 1981. It was called A Model for Curriculum and Instruction, Discipline Fields, Interdisciplinarity, and Cognitive Processes. And her most recent publication was co-authored with Nigua Duila, Demonstrating Student Mastery with Digital Badges and Portfolios, an ASCD publication. But I am proud to say that we have not only Arnaldo's books in our collection, but many of Dr. Jacobs as well. So welcome to everyone, and I will pass it over now to Dr. Jacobs.
Thank you very much. Are you running the slides, just technically, because I need to know who is moving?
I am.
Okay, so if you could move those ahead, and just Jennifer, one little correction on the introduction, and thank you. It's been my good fortune to publish and work with many people. I wrote the foreword in David's book. I didn't co-author it, and so that's really appreciated. The most recent work has been the book on Bold Moves. I have a new book coming out next year with Allison Zamuda on curriculum as narrative and storyboarding and streamlining curriculum. I'm very excited about it. So thank you for that and for the lovely introduction. But I think the main point, if we could keep moving the slides, is to focus on our author today. And I think one of the things that I want to point out, let's go back one so they can see the cover. He has two books out. This is the earlier book on landscape architecture, K through 12. And let me just say that I was so impressed by not only the imaginative but practical way he makes accessible an area that I don't think students study. I think there's a lot of interest in architecture. Kids are always building, aren't they? They see it. But landscape architecture, which is actually a very refreshing concept, that we can create almost theater forms in the display and organization of a park, that there can be magnificent ways we play with topiary or positioning of a grounds. We all know that amazing ability that landscape architects have of creating pathways that surprise us. What a great thing to introduce to students. So I have to say that I'm delighted you've done your new architecture book, but one of the things that struck me was this was unique. I think what you've got is unique here. Interdisciplinarity has been with us for a while. Some people do it well, some do not. We can get into that. What I think you've gifted us with is taking this very amazing concept and field and bringing it to the possibilities for classroom teachers to use. So I want to turn the time over actually to Arnaldo to describe something of his remarkable background and who he is, because he brings a lot of his own interdisciplinary fields together. So Arnaldo, if I might turn it back to you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Jacobs. What an honor that you participated today. I'm really thrilled. Thank you, Jennifer. She's the director of the Teachers College Library. Thank you for letting me participate. And you know what? I want to thank everybody in the audience. They might be educators, they might be administrators, they might be artists, they might be art educators, they might be architects, and they might be landscape architects. So welcome all for taking your time and share, because then later I hope you can share even a little bit what you do. And maybe, and my goal is that at the end of this presentation, you can get something that you can use in your practice. So the big idea of this presentation, more than me sharing my book, is two things. To share the joy of the TC, the Teachers College experience. How, even though I was majoring in art education, compared to other colleges that have degrees on, sometimes those programs can be very strict and not flexible enough. And when I was in Teachers College, and I told at that time, my advisor was Pravda Sahasrabudhi. And I told him that I would like to take courses in curriculum and teaching. He was the first one that told me yes, because even though you're an art teacher, you need to have a strong background in literacy or in math. And then also I wanted to take courses in architecture, even though I was finishing my background, my first degree is a professional degree in architecture called environmental design. But he let me take graduate courses in that area. So I was able to, what we call in probably Bloom's taxonomy, synthesis. How can you merge different things, but then later one become greater than its parts? So I want to thank Teachers College as a big idea of this presentation. And second, and more important, is the concept of how somebody in your life, in your journey as a professional, empower you with so much content, with so much knowledge, that then when you become a teacher, you use those skills. And I'm talking about Heidi Jacobs. I remember, I was going to say this later, but she said at the beginning of her courses, I come here to disturb your minds. So Dr. Jacob, thank you for disturb mine, but in all the positive way. So I want to say, like, again, thanks Dr. Jacob, thanks Jennifer, all the participants. And also I want to thank Dale Davis. He was my editor. As you can see, I have a strong accent. So English is my second language. But I want to thank the editor, Dale C. Davis, because he reviewed all the book and gave me feedback and make it better. So what we're going to be talking about today. So it's structured in 5 parts, and I'm going to try to make the flow, because process is more important than product. I hope the process will be smooth and easy. So the first part, I'm going to talk a little bit of my background and professional experiences, so you can have an idea why I end up doing what I did. Then what is this book about? The content. Is this about landscape architecture, or is this about education? And of course, the concepts, I want to highlight that, the concept that influenced this book. What is the content? Where is this K-12 curriculum be implemented? What are the benefits of implementing it? The validity of it? What does it bring to the field of education? That will be the reliability. But I hope in the future they will bring discussion and study, and it will be a seed to create more study on spatial intelligence, on design education and cognitive skills that come from architecture and landscape architecture. And then finally, what is the next step and final thoughts? So for that, very briefly, I have the joy I'm from Puerto Rico originally, So I went to the School of Architecture in Puerto Rico, and they have a program where the BS in architecture is called Bachelor of Environmental Design. When I finished that, then I went to City College of New York, and I finished there another bachelor in landscape architecture. At the same time, I was finishing my master in art and art education. After I finished that goal, my professor at City told me, if you want, you don't have to study anymore. You are eligible based on your academic record to go for the board examination, both as an architect or landscape architect. But life is about choices. I went back to Puerto Rico, taught courses in the School of Architecture where I was a student, working restoration. And then I ended up in a program where I was a teacher, an educator, teaching restoration skills to restore landmark buildings. Then the Board of Education, they were hiring bilingual teachers in 1994. I applied, and then they offered me a free master's. It was BICET program in bilingual special ed. And trust me, at that time, I said, bilingual special ed, what is that? And I decided to take the risk so I can go back to New York. And it was the best thing I did in my life. So, and especially because then when I went back as a teacher, I developed architectural program for kids as soon as I became a teacher. So what is this book about? Is this book about landscape architecture or education? So this, I call it my soup. These are some of the concepts that I use to design, to enjoy putting together this book. So you will see concepts in design education, project-based education, thematic instruction, critical thinking, Bloom taxonomy, they go related. They're related. Interdisciplinary curriculum design, thanks to Heidi. Portfolio assessment, that also thanks to Heidi. Holistic education, another expansion of the concept of interdisciplinary. Literacy integration. I was trained a lot in balanced literacy, a program from New Zealand that was in Australia that was implemented in New York City public schools. And that helped me decertify many bilingual kids, students, and special education students. Special education concerns. Art education and special ed helps a lot because we need to have different styles, a repertoire of activities for those kids that learn in a different way. That's why I'm a believer also of multiple intelligence theory. Then standards of learning, working in cooperative groups with the concept of cooperative education, STEAM implementation. And I want to say something about it because many people think, oh, STEAM, well, STEM also. They think it's only about the content of science, technology, engineering, and math. But no, it's more than that. Because when you talk about science, you have the scientific method. When you talk about engineering, if you Google it, they have a specific design method. So it was time. That's why later on I'm going to explain that architecture and landscape architecture have also its own method. And that's what I'm bringing in these books that I'm sharing with you today. Vocational trade education. Even though I believe that the concept of architecture and landscape architecture is something that it's K-12, it can be also valuable, this book, for those teachers that maybe there's no curriculum, there's only activity books, but they teach a trade, architectural drafting, architectural technology, architectural design, landscape design. Then creativity development through art education experiences. As you can probably see or perceive, I'm a fighter for art education rights. And like I said at the beginning with some of you, I cannot forget meeting Maxine Green and how she also promote the concept of art as a center of the curriculum. So those are the some of the academic, and using schools as an outdoor classroom. I almost forget that. is the concept of realia. We don't have to sometimes have a specific setting. We have school backyards. Even the front of a school, we can use it as a classroom. So these are some of the things I would like to share that tell you what is this book about. Now, academic background. So when I went to Columbia, what I want to share here is my master project, because this was the genesis of my books. At that time, what I researched was learning through architecture, an interdisciplinary curriculum guide for art educators. And this is what helped me do research, knowing more about Rasmussen, that he said architecture is the mother of all art, knowing about Arnheim, that he was an art educator, but he wrote books in the art of architecture. Dewey, art as an experience, landscapes of learning of Maxine Green, and of course, Heidi Jacob, that I'm going to present later, the book in interdisciplinary curriculum design. So if this doesn't happen, I would not be here today sharing these two products with you. So then, like I said before, when I became a teacher, I was so lucky. I went to Bushwick, New York, and they needed to do something. And there was money in Title I for bilingual kids, and also for kids that need, extra time for instruction. So I told her, okay, I'll help you. So let's create a summer program. And the beauty of it was that these kids have to take summer school because they didn't pass the test. They were middle school kids. So the math Miss Arcentales and I sat and I said, okay, let's talk about skills. What are the skills and content that these tests have that we need to provide these kids? And guess what? We did it through architecture. Because for me, is one of the most interdisciplinary themes there is. So the kids were engaged in different activities and they were able to pass the test. The monitor of the state of New York came and they told Mr. Vasquez, the superintendent, this is the best program we have ever seen in the history of this district. You need to do it district-wide. Unfortunately, that didn't happen because then the superintendent, they changed the superintendent. But I got a joy that everybody in the district knew about it, and it changed a little bit the culture of that district. They realized the importance of the arts, the importance of hands-on, and the importance of interdisciplinary approach. Then later below, I worked also in the Bronx. They have a school, and I'm going to talk about that later, so I'm going to jump. But I want to share the last picture because that was later. After I work as a teacher in New York City Public School, I work with some of the nonprofits that I used to hire to train our teachers in staff development programs. I don't want to say their names, but they have programs in Staten Island and they use the built environment, well, in all of New York City. But I was able to work developing an environmental awareness program in Staten Island where the kids, I help them go through the experience of what landscape designers or architects do. And they end up doing their own garden. It was called the Eco Garden. And when they see the garden, everybody said, you help them doing that. They designed it. They dig those holes. I was just a facilitator. So that gives you an example of that it can be done and how all these lessons, all these learning experiences, I modified them. I didn't do it exactly the way I did it while I was working, but helped me or inspired me to do this lesson and try to now have them accessible to my colleagues in United States or in the world, who knows. So going with professional background, that in District 7, in the South Bronx, I started as a staff developer, trying to help teachers implement the balanced literacy program. But among the middle schools, there were different themes. For example, business, journalism, technology, law and government, communication, and architectural design. And as a study developer, I told to my superintendent, that I talked to him today, by the way, I mean, yesterday, but I emailed him. And I told him, listen, how come these middle schools are going to have the themes, but where is the curriculum? There was no curriculum for that. So through grants from the New York City Council of the Arts, from other organizations, of course, my baby was architectural design school. I helped creating a study development program in which I use Heidi's book, I will show you later, to train our teachers in how integrate, if it is architecture or it is journalism. And journalism, that school have a partnership with the New York Times. So empower them so they can have ownership of what they were teaching. If they didn't have that, no curriculum was going to work. So I have the joy to help many teachers in that area and say, oh my God, Cardona, now with this training, I can do it. I can go back when school starts and integrate architecture in social study or architecture in math or journalism with literacy. So it was a great experience for me. And also it helped me shape my book. Now, what were the concepts that influenced this guide? Dr. Jacobs mentioned, that's why I'm quoting her, when she started one of her courses. What type of students do we need? Do we need students that memorize data, or we need students that solve problems, think critically, and can apply what they know? And that resonated. Dr. Jacobs, sorry, you will see many references to you. So, but this will validate. You will realize how meaningful it was, everything that you share as a professor. So it's true. We were used in our instruction long time ago in algorithms, memorize the timetables. Oh, that boy is intelligent. He memorized it. No, that's not intelligence. Memorizing. Intelligence is when they perform with knowledge. The computers have knowledge. The books have knowledge, but only the human being can translate that into solving problems, etc. And that concept that Dr. Jacob presented in her course is really what helped me shaped those lessons that I'm presenting in my two books. The other one that she presented, how should students be assessed? Should be by standardized tests or by assessment? And then assess them in the way they perform through time. I remember with Wiggins, right, Dr. Jacobs? It was, you pair up with Wiggins, it was a summer course. And guess what? In architecture, in art, in landscape, we use portfolio. So when I heard, hold on a second, but this is not the portfolio that architects are talking about. What is the point of a portfolio? It's an assessment too, but it's assessing progress, not in one episode. It's through time. For those one that were our special education teacher, when you work with autistic kids, you do a decrete. You have a goal, but you have to divide it in 10 episodes. And then later, maybe from those 10 episodes, you get the goal achieved only in 1 or 2 or 3 episodes. So that's so important. See progress through time. Not because a kid failed in one test, oh, he's a failure. No. There are many factors, there are many moments, there are many opportunities that we need to give them to succeed. So thank you, Dr. Jacobs, because those concepts that you brought, like I told you when we talked last time, it helped me as a practitioner. But you know how many kids have benefited from what I learned from you? I decertified so many kids that were in special ed programs in a wrong way, or in bilingual programs. Oh my God. And it was we teachers have a craft. Our profession is not something that You can just say, no, we have to be proud of our craft. So the more skills you have, the more your kids will benefit. So it was all this theory. And something else, many people talk, oh, practice is more important. I believe that you need to have a theoretical framework first. And then when you become a practitioner, is the concept of action research. Then you put it into practice. That's when you realize that what you're doing have been studied, have been proven. And if it, I don't like to say work or do not work. I like the word effectiveness, if it is effective or not. So this is the book. I'm on all the book that Dr. Jacob have written. These, I have the first edition, Dr. Jacob, by the way, the white cover. I was looking at it. This is the book that opened up my window. Remember, my training was completely different. Then education, I remember the word curriculum. Curriculum, what is curriculum? Which now that I'm a teacher, I retired from the board of ed last year, I can say it's like a train track. You have steps, but you have to have a goal. Where you're going. And those steps are the learning experiences that will lead you to reach that goal. So this book helped me for staff development programs, for my own practice. And this book really inspired me to write my book. And I'm honored. I'm sorry again. I go back to Heidi Jacobs. She was so kind to tell me, Arnaldo, I'm going to let you borrow my diagram because this is inside the book and she have changed it and she make it with great graphics. This is the gist. This is the seed of the interdisciplinary model that she developed. How you need to, of thematic instruction, how you have to find a theme, and the way she defined it, make connections between disciplines. What activity you are going to do in order to make a connection between that theme or concept and social study and science. And that the richness, I witnessed that as a teacher. When the kids see connection between the disciplines, that's when those aha moments become richer and meaningful. I love to see the kids doing, Mr. C, that was the way they call me. They didn't say Cardona. They said, Mr. C, now I get it. So you build things and they're not in 2 dimensions. They are in 3 dimensions. Yes, that's an aha moment. So it was this model that helped me a lot share and do training with many other teachers. But of course, critical thinking. And we talk also about Bloom's taxonomy. Levels of coordination, action words. Those are things that I didn't know before. And sounds good. Dr. Jacobs in her course shared those things. Now there are differences. Now the Vanderbilt University have expanded. But I use for every lesson in my book, there is a level of coordination in reference of the revised version of Bloom taxonomy. One of the things that were in the market that I saw were that there are activity books in art or in architecture, maybe not in landscape architecture, but in architecture. But activity book is different than a curriculum because they don't bring the concept of what level of cognition that kid is developing. They are architects trying to do what educators know. So that's why being both have helped me to do something teacher-friendly that are the things that organizations like the American Institute of Architects or the American Society of Landscape Architects want to do, but because they don't have that content in pedagogy, they have the best intentions, but the books that have done are activity books. They are not curriculums. So this is the table of content of the book. Very briefly, so I can keep moving on. The first part was a rationale. The second part was a staff development program. Like if I have to give a presentation to a group of teachers and work with them, I already have it in my book. I just have to do slides and use it. But the heart of it are the learning experiences, the K-12 learning experiences. They use the standard of learnings based on New York City. They use Bloom taxonomy, and the lessons go from lower thinking skills to higher order thinking skill. There is a progression. In architecture, it's funny because I have my dean of, I taught in a college in New York City, and our dean, Mr. Aliceas, Dr. Alicea said, you know what? In order to be ordered, you need to have chaos first. And say, wow, that's a deep thought. But yes, sometimes when you design lessons, you might have to work with the chaotic activities first, and then lesson, and then later, like when you do rum, when you do wine, do the most sophisticated ones at the end. So all my lessons in this book follow that beautiful progression. Then I even include my syllable, a chapter in higher education for those ones that maybe want to become a landscape architect, or even landscape architect that want to teach in college. So I'm adding my syllabus as a college professor when I taught landscape architecture courses. Then career discovery and outreach for professional organizations like AIA, American Institute of Architects, or ASLA, American Society of Landscape Architects. Then implementing a landscape architecture educational program at institutional level, those are for nonprofits. I'm so glad that in the world of the arts, there are many organizations giving money to arts organizations. So those nonprofits, by having these books, they can say, yeah, we have programs in this and that. Oh, we can now implement in our programs architecture and landscape architecture program, after schools, summer programs, that kind of stuff. And that's it. Because I'm not going to talk about the author or the bibliography there, you can go and read it. But very briefly, just a picture says more than 1,000 words. What is the structure? What are you going to see inside the book? Developmental child development. You need to know what are the characteristics of a kid in K to second versus the child development characteristic to 3 to 5, then to 6 to 9, then to 6 to 8, then to 9 to 12. So before age grade level, there are some developmental characteristics to make the teacher aware about them, and some concerns. For example, this one was literacy, because in early childhood, the emphasis is literacy. Then later, it changed to math. The focus then later changed to social study. I know Dr. Jacobs always said also that the theme of social study is one of the best to use for interdisciplinary instruction. Then later, you have a lesson the way teachers do write it. Because in other books, you see activity book, you see a goal maybe, but I wanted to do it in a way that if a teacher needs to be observed by a principal, they can just make a Xerox copy or rewrite the information and give it to the principal and be observed. So I wanted a teacher-friendly lesson format. And then every lesson have a sample. I call it expected outcome. Not to tell the teacher all of them have to look like this, but to give an idea to the teacher of an expected outcome of one of the students. So the first part is, very briefly, how can you use your backyard and develop skills. So the first part is listing and counting. Let's do a treasure hunt. Let's go outside to the backyard. Let's see what we found. And then the kids see it and they just place them. There's no more skill further than that. Then after that, you know what? Let's associate the shapes and the form of those leaves with the tree that is there. And then another skill happens, and it's mapping and placing. Then later, you know what? You're very good, guys. You place the right, you know where the gravel is, you know where those trees are, where the sticks are. Guess what? Let's transform it. Let's go higher order things and skill in teacher's term. Design your own backyard. What would you like to look like? Go beyond thinking from the box, So develop the creativity. So then later, this is again a picture that just show the teacher one solution. It can be many. Everything goes. There's no right or wrong. But this kid, for example, when I work with him, because I work with kids in order to do all these things that you see there, it took me a long time. And thank you for the parents that let me work with them. So the kid said, okay, Mr. C, I want an area to plant vegetables. So I like to eat tomatoes. I want to play an area to play. I want an area to run. I want an area for hide and seek. So that's what is the way they communicate through three-dimensional elements or media. Then 3 to 5th, they have a page about developmental literacy concerns. In this case, is different samples of architectural project. For example, in this case, is a park. And then the lesson, I put there a skill because that's what the lesson is about. It's not just to do projects. Where is the beef? Where is the learning? What is the skill that the kids are developing? So that's what I would like in each lesson. Then later in 6th to 8th, when I was teaching that grade level, Western Hemisphere, I love it because then you learn Mesopotamia, the pyramids, all that stuff. So what not better than learn about the history of gardens? The Egyptian gardens were the first one that were geometrical. Then compare that to the Italian gardens that they have slopes. So it's different. With the English garden, that is not orthogonal or have angles or use a grid. They let nature speak itself. Or the Japanese garden that have beautiful view, is miniaturization of the real world. And of course, the French gardens that they use geometry. That is, by the way, this is great to teach math, area, geometrical shapes. And there's an association between social studies content and how through landscape architecture and architecture, kids can see that connection. Now, of course, as a teacher, I see so many books, so many activity books that they have activities, but where is the assessment? So that's why I created this rubric, because when I was a teacher, I put that chart notebook with a rubric very visible. So the kids, they don't see me that I'm evaluating them. This is for their self-assessment. Because then when they're used to this, they assess themselves through the rubric. And that's why it was so important including a rubric as part of my books. And of course, portfolio assessments. I look at different type of portfolio assessment. Now that concept have grown and there's a lot about it. But I did it something that will be very related to architecture. And of course, you have percentages. And I related to the goals because when teachers do goals, they have a different format. But when special education teachers write goals, they write it in a way called a behavioral objective using percentages. The kid will perform in so and so percent when 5 blocks were given and he's able to identify one, that kind of stuff. So that's why the percentage is so important. Then something that is very important is, like I said, in engineering, they have a methodology, they have a process. So I wanted to share how the architecture design process and the landscape architecture process that are similar, even though I changed it in both books, they're not exactly the same, can be an application to solve all the kind of problems. And I made a comparison between one made by a project made by a landscape architect versus a project done by a teacher or a curriculum designer, and the parallels of it. I hope, again, by presenting this, that this brings more conversation and more study will arise in the future to test these ideas. This is the syllabus that I mentioned before. I'm going to go fast. I just want to start listening to you. Then this is part of the syllabus. Then this is for the nonprofit organizations. Steps to follow. If it is not I retire as a teacher, I will be making my own, but no, I wanted to now be an urban gardener, enjoy my nursery, but many people might create a nonprofit that offer programs and not necessarily call it architecture or landscape architecture, but talk about the natural environment. And now with climate change, with all this movement, it will be ideal to teach kids to plant things, to appreciate nature, and for teachers to understand all the learning behind our outdoor classroom, that is our yards or our parks. Then something very important. I have said that word too much, important, but this is really important because when I was searching or Googling terms, and I Googled the word landscape architecture education and education in landscape architecture, both talk about programs to become a landscape architecture, a landscape architect or an architect. So there are two different terms. When you talk about education in landscape architecture or education in architecture, it's about becoming that as a profession. But when I define landscape architecture education, I'm talking about the study of behaviors, cognitive processes, problem-solving skills, and applications involved in the field of landscape architecture design. In curriculum design, it can be used as a theme to develop interdisciplinary learning experiences, and in the field of art education, should be incorporated as another art disciplines. So if this definition is being validated and there's studies, reliability, whatever, I hope my contribution to the field will be define a term that was not defined before. So where can this curriculum be implemented? I implemented during daytime when I was a kindergarten teacher, and you know the literacy blocks, right? So I started talking, good morning, boys and girls. I have these cool books about trees. And I started doing a read aloud about trees and say, guys, what do you think is a big idea about the trees in the neighborhood? Great. Let's do a beginning, middle, and end. Let's do a retelling. Let's do a word study. Let's do a guided reading lesson or a guided writing. Let's do independent reading. And then the books were about nature itself. So it can be done in daytime. But it will be ideal for after-school programs. Every day, let's see, maybe once a week, the kids will go to the school after school and they have time to develop projects and build things. So it will be ideal for after school programs. For summer programs, I'm a board member of a foundation for architecture in Puerto Rico, and they have a summer program, and it's a real success. And I brought some issues to integrate the landscaping architecture part. But the kids learn by doing, and architecture is an ideal way to expose the kids for hands-on activities. STEM, we talk about STEM. Design, it will be ideal for STEM program. For career discovery, that will be for professional organization, and for staff development, because it's the concept, not about architecture or landscape architecture, is the concept of realia. How kids can learn through the environment, from everything that surrounds us. Yes, so what are the benefits of implementing this curriculum guide? Students will benefit from a holistic experience. Students will develop high-order thinking skills through hands-on experiences. Students will engage in design exercises that will help them see their world in a three-dimensional way. Students will explore critical thinking skills that will enable them to solve problems using real life situations as reference. Teachers will be empowered with a teaching approach in which both student and teacher can develop their creativity. That's one of the biggest problems in education. You are in districts, impose your curriculum. Through interdisciplinary approach, you can, cross the red light and use your creativity. That's why it's important that we have that flexibility as professionals in education and promote innovative ways of teaching. So, what do this bring to the field of education? Again, I'm hammering now that these books for NEA, National Endowment of the Arts, for all the institutions, recognize and open up money to develop this foundation. There are so many foundations. There are so many rich people that give money to this foundation. They should give money to develop architecture and landscape architecture program because it will open up the way kids view the world. Then, ideal theme for interdisciplinary curriculum design. Ideal theme for STEM programs. It will be ideal for solving problem method. Each lesson can be a challenge. Kids will learn through discovery. You say, okay, guys, I have a timer. You have 45 minutes to do a house. Everything goes. Then they share about it. They have a show and tell. And then they learn from each other, and it's fun. That's what I want to highlight. That's why my joy of being a teacher. Imagine all my friends say, Cardona, from architecture and landscape, what? You became a teacher? Yes. And I'm so proud of it. Then problem-solving method, educational trends, bringing those two terms in the field of education. I hope, again, studies of their cognitive processes can be studied, all those gains, and their applications. Now, let me see. So where can you find this curriculum? And I'm sorry, I'm not advertising myself, but maybe I have, this is my opportunity. But if you have a colleague, you can Google the titles. And the good thing is, I don't want to say the name of it. One of the companies deconstruct the book so well that you can see what I show you, sample of the lessons, even a little bit of my biography. So I recommend you that you can Google my name or Google the name of the books, and they will give you more details about the content of the book. And I was very happy. I was very thrilled this summer that I was looking at an email, and from the Book Authority, they put it #1 about books to read in the area of landscape architecture. I was really, really happy about it. So what is coming next? My second book, because these are really, the activities are so much fun and even easier to implement. But I love the way Jennifer called it. It's the companion book, and it really is. So what you're going to see there, simple things. In kindergarten, kids need to see that things connect, right? So with sticks, you can teach geometry. So you can say, okay, guys, connect things. Or you create a triangle. Then there is a skill in math. I remember Turk Math, a math program from Chicago, that said, okay, you created something, double it. Or with numbers. What is the double of 2? So 2 and 2 floor. Double 6, 12. So why not doubling materials too? So if you double a triangle, then you create a diamond. If you double a rectangle, a square, maybe then it becomes a rectangle. So that's a skill. So even though it's so elementary, it's part of architecture design. Then later, its application in another lesson is how something that you can build with triangle, that is a truss, how kids can create support systems, and you can play with them saying, wow, look how by putting things together. So one only will not support these books, but when you put things together, then you create something stronger and meaningful. And As an art teacher, I don't know about you guys, all those people that are teachers. Me and the 99 cent store were my best friends, because when you have to teach a whole school, you need to buy, sometimes you get money from your school, sometimes not. So I said, oh, straws, what am I going to do with straws? So I created shapes with straws. And this is a different one that I saw in a science or math, that they use, I think, paper to connect them. No, I use a fish wire, and it's like a magic trick. And then the kids, because with one string, you can create the tetrahedron. And then when they create one, they say, guys, you have a bunch in your table, create as many. Then stop. I have a timer, and I said, 1, 2, 3, 4, the countdown, you tell, stop. Now you have to put together all the tetrahedron. And the shapes they create stars, they create infinite solutions. So that's part of design education, and is in this book. Then later, challenges. For example, I find a lot of recycled materials and garbage, and say, guys, you have 40 minutes to design the tallest tower you can. And it's not about creating the tower, it's about later explaining your projects. And then they lose that fear of talking to the in the classroom. And say, Mr. C, I did this because I noticed we're going to fall down, so I had to reinforce this area. And again, they learn by doing. And these are some of the lessons you will see. And one of the lessons that I like a lot is when kids, the first lesson is, this is from 3 to 5, design a house. Then later, design a bridge. Then later, design a building. Again, this is a picture just to help the teacher have an idea, but it can be different ways to design a building. And then at last, design a city. Why? Because if you have, let's say, 4 tables or 5 tables or 4 kids, 4 kids in each table, then each table can come out with their own city. It can be a modern city, a classical city, whatever the repertoire of visuals they have, they can express it. I always said, and I put it in the book so I can copyright that phrase, art is communication. It's the pure expression of the soul. So when kids do art or architecture, they are expressing themselves. So the activities in this book for students to discover the built environment through hands-on activities and design exercises. Although the book mimics design problems that architects might be exposed to, the main goal of the book is for students to gain skills in all disciplines while gaining problem-solving skills. In this case, you will see a reference of the human body. I remember when I was a kindergarten teacher, it was me, myself, and I, or me and the environment, or me. So why not saying, okay, me, my body, and my building? So that's one of the lessons also I include in the books. So thank you for letting me share, because that's the joy of being a teacher, sharing. I share a book, I share writing, and I am so proud that colleagues are here, friends, architects, landscape architects, because I hope I'm just a facilitator of something that I experienced as a teacher in New York City, but I hope it can be useful for your practices. So let's use the natural and built environment to develop more meaningful and learning experiences. Thank you. And now we have the Q&A, and I hope I was fast enough so we have enough time to have a dialogue and have fun. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much. I guess we can open this up for questions. I am looking at the chat and I see one comment that architecture is great for STREAM approach. STREAM approach.
Yeah,
and I wondered if someone could say a little bit more about that.
I would prefer that the audience talk first, and maybe them later I do a recap. Because if I'm not wrong, they are talking about the concept. There is STEM and STEAM. The difference is art, because many teachers, actually art teachers, are teaching STEM, but art should be included as part of STEM,
Mhm.
to make STEM. But anyway, you talk, and I just want to give you that hint. But that's a very
Yeah.
interesting concept. So go ahead.
Yeah, so I was the one that put it in, and the reason
Oh.
being our meaning reading or literacy. When you're looking at teaching interdisciplinary, often, as you said, the first place where people go is often social studies or literature or going for an arts integration. So communication, as you said, was the core. So part of it when you're doing things, especially like in a library setting, we often start with content or literature or book, and that's the first relation point, and develop the idea from there. So it's a term that comes up in that type of a context. And I know for myself, it's one I work with a lot because when I think about landscape architecture, it's very strongly related to visual consciousness. And visual consciousness is something you really have to explore verbally in some ways because it's a very subjective experience.
Thank you for that contribution. That's a great concept, and I'm so glad you mentioned it. And I want to highlight the importance of the literacy component. Like, I want to take a break after these two books, but if I have to do a next book, I want to write read alouds that will be connected to each lesson. So all the teacher already have it. So they can start with literacy, like a story. And what is the skill? Are we teaching, retelling or rhyming words, But yes, what you mentioned is very important. And I love what you mentioned about visual consciousness. I'm going to research on that. So I'm so glad you brought it up.
The reason why I was going to say the reason why I'm bringing it up is exactly how I do architecture. And I am doing pairings in books, and I've been doing it now for a number of years.
You do
And
architecture?
Well, I teach, I communicate through informal lessons, either in the library or a makerspace environment. And I often start with a simple book. Like I'll do the book, if you know the book, it's either Dreaming Up or Building Up, where they show children playing. And there's like children working with mud, and it's and they're building, and then the book is a beautiful way to start the discussion because the next image is a mud architecture piece. So
that's awesome.
So I do a lot of these pairings, and that's why I was really excited to see your work because it's a great way to extend this learning.
Oh, so that's great. Actually, what I have been trying to work is to find references, like books related to these topics. I go to, the internet, but also go even to Goodwills, and I discovered these books that are not even in the net, and they talk about building things. So that will be the next step. Have a good references for teachers to have available to do those great activities. I love that model. Activity.
I want to be a little bit mindful of our time, but we have a couple of other questions. If we can stay on. The first one is a comment that technology can be a distraction, but also a resource. What has been the biggest challenge you have had between kids' activities and technology? Biggest challenge.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and start it.
Okay.
Technology, AutoCAD, Revit, oh my God, SketchUp. Our technology is a tool. It's like a media. It's the mechanism that those ideas can be represented. So technology and more technology, the first sample of the technology was a wheel. So there is technology that doesn't have to even do with computers, like hydraulics. The Italian were doing gardens, not with pumps. They were using the physics, the natural laws of physics to create these fountains in Italy that they don't need electricity. They use rivers, and that's technology. The aqueducts, and that's architecture. So the concept of technology and architecture and art go by hand by hand. So I'm glad that they mentioned that because that is a very important component. And many are technology teachers are even teaching AutoCAD, from Photoshop only. They're using it also to do three-dimensional drawings. So they both hand to hand.
I think one final question here is, would an architecture education interdisciplinary curriculum or guide or methodology be good for students with learning disabilities?
Yes. My experience as a bilingual special ed, there is a license for bilingual special ed and there is a license for special education. That is really working with kids with different learning styles. The first thing I want to share is multiple intelligence theory. I myself, I'm not a auditive learner. You talk to me, and if I don't see movement, that's why I'm moving around because I'm a visual learner. So the first thing you have to think when you work, and there is a chapter in my book about that, working with kids that have learning disabilities, like what concerns to follow. Very briefly, two things. Individualized instruction. You cannot expect that they are going to be part of the group and be able to express themselves like others. No, you have to provide in these lessons sometimes that you can satellite table by table and give them a one-to-one because maybe they have fear, peer pressure, other things. And then assess their learning style. They might be kinesthetical students. Maybe they are good with sports. So I throw them balls, softballs, nothing hard. Or maybe I do something that is social. Maybe, you know what, you can be a good reporter. Tell them how they did that building or what building is his favorite building. So using, that's why the special education teachers are in my heart, because we need to be so creative in create extensions for each lesson to make it adaptable to our school population.
Well, thank you so much for that. Your quote about art is communication and pure communication or expression is the soul is just so resonant of how you've delivered your presentation today, with such artful communication and feeling, and your practice in the schools and elsewhere, I think has really been a model for us, model for wonderful teaching. And really thank you so much for sharing your experience and your creativity. It was been really a very insightful to an area I really didn't know too much about, but hope to learn a little bit more. So thank you so much, Arnaldo, and thank you, Heidi, as well, for joining us and saying a few words, and to everyone for being here and sharing your thoughts. And I'm sure that if you wish to follow up on some questions, we'd be happy to accept them and get back to you.
And Jennifer, thank you for those words. They were very flattering. And please be free to share my email address for anybody that have further questions. And again, we are in this world, we are living. If we don't help each other, if we don't support each other, that's what we are here for as human beings. So let's create community, let's create networking, and let's make our life easier and having fun when we do things. So thank you for the opportunity. Okay. And Dr. Jacob, what a pleasure again. Thank you for helping me help others, meaning the kids.
Okay.